it's almost impossible to really reach to fulfill your destiny and to be all that he wants us to be if we don't have that understanding and acceptance of who we are, and not just of ourselves, but of those people around us. In about 10 minutes, my whole life made more sense than it had in the 30 years before that.
And Joanne would like to start with the concrete random, and because they like to be in control. The strong-willed or the concrete random person only has to do one thing: die. And we are going to relate that to you.
Everything else is optional.
Everything else is optional.
Right. Oh boy. Welcome back to Know and Grow. You can't live what you don't know. And we are having Dick and Joanne Fetzer with us today. We are back for part 2 of the learning styles, or what I like to say, what makes you tick. And we were really enlightened last week when we heard about the 4 different styles and what the different characteristics of each of them were. And now we're having Dick and Joanne back with us, and they're going to give us some real life examples, everyday examples. And here they are. Hi, Dick and Joanne.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi,
Bonnie.
Bonnie.
We're so pleased to have you.
Thank you.
And if it's okay, I'm going to show the little survey that you made up of questions for each category. I'm going to show the audience what they are, and so that they can just get a quick understanding of some of the things they might want to ask themselves to find out what category they fall in. But also, I will put the link to the PDF so you can actually download it and print it out and fill it out for yourself. And I'll put links to Cynthia Tobias's book. Here we go, The Way They Learn. Well, here, there. The Way They Learn, and also Dick Fetzer's book, Please Listen to Me. And these 2 books go hand in glove. I would make sure I had both of them in my library. So, okay, so first, I am going to show you, let me bring this in. Okay, this is the Learning Styles inventory. I call it a little survey. And I did this with my family members over Thanksgiving. And again, you can download it and complete it for yourself. But let's go through it real quick. What you'll do when you download it is you'll check each characteristic that strongly describes you all or much of the time. And then there's a little spot to put the total check marks at the bottom of each style. Okay, for the concrete sequential.
Okay, the concrete sequential, these are some qualities or characteristics. They prefer to follow a routine, and being on time is important to them. It is important that they complete one task before beginning another task. Concrete sequentials prefer to use a to-do list. They tend to look for facts rather than for hidden meaning. They function best when things are orderly. They depend upon logic to solve a problem. A concrete random person prefers step-by-step directions. They are very goal-oriented, and they prefer to focus on only one task at a time.
So you'll just put a check mark on the ones that apply to you all or much of the time strongly. And then there's a little box right there for the total. Okay, let's go on to the next one, Joanne.
The abstract sequential learning style prefers to work by themselves. They need time to think before responding to a question. They need time to ponder a situation or a problem. They enjoy doing the research for a project. They tend to analyze a lot, and they feel pressured when put under time restrictions and deadlines. They tend not to show their emotions as freely as some other learning styles. They do not show much expression, and deciding what to order from a menu is often very difficult for them. And sometimes they are accused of being a procrastinator for some of the above mentioned reasons.
I am abstract sequential through and through. I think I checkmarked 9 of those.
Wow. That's good. Yeah.
But in the concrete sequential, I checkmarked 7, so I'm close behind with that one.
You're very sequential, Bonnie.
Wow.
Okay, go ahead, Joanne.
The abstract random learning style feels it is necessary to please people. They often have a hard time getting to places on time. They can multitask. They enjoy multitasking. They're not bothered by a cluttered or a disorganized environment. Social interaction is very important to them. They will often move to another task if they become bored. They tend to focus on the big picture instead of intricate details. The abstract random tends to make decisions with their heart rather than with their head. They have a hard time accepting even criticism that is meant to be constructive. And they enjoy working with others and being involved in group projects.
Now, I listened to the video that you sent me, and I think you mentioned that they are often creative, like in art, music, things like that. Was I listening correctly to that?
Yes.
Yes, very much so. Yes.
Okay.
Very creative. And concrete random learning style, which I have, has a special place in my heart.
Ah, that's what you are, right?
It is. It's one of my stronger one, I think. Having options is extremely important to the concrete random learning style. Respect and trust must be earned by other people. Often they find a different or usually a more creative way to do something. And these are the people that enjoy taking risks and can be very spontaneous. The concrete random may have many acquaintances, but few really close friends. They like to experience things for themselves rather than take someone else's word for it, and that can sometimes cause a problem. They become uncomfortable when someone stands behind them and looks over their shoulder. You could say the concrete random has a pretty big personal space bubble. Concrete randoms tend to fight for the underdog. They have a strong desire to be different from the status quo, and they will often do the opposite of what they are told to do.
Oh boy.
Right?
Well, it's going to be interesting to maybe hear a story or two of you and Dick, because you sound like you're opposite in some ways.
Yes.
Interesting.
So opposites attract, right?
Yes.
And again, there'll be a link so that you can download the PDF version of this and fill it out for yourself. Okay. So I'm going to just let you guys just take off and run with this with any examples you want to give, however you want to flow and move on. Just go for it.
Start down here.
Well, Joanne would like to start with a concrete random. And because, they like to be in control. So we're going to start with that. And again, as I said, they are about 7% of the groups of the people we were in and that we taught. And when we're around people, they very seldom are the majority. The only thing, and I'm going to point out by saying this, and Cynthia actually says this, they are strong-willed. She said the strong-willed or the concrete random person only has to do one thing, die. And we are going to relate that to you.
Everything else is optional.
Everything else is optional.
Right. Oh boy.
Relate that to you as we go. I want Joanne to take the lead on this because it definitely is her strongest.
Do I hear a strong hint of stubbornness in this?
Could be at times.
Let me just say, other learning styles can also be stubborn. So we are stubborn with a purpose.
Yeah.
Well, that's true. I am stubborn. That's come to think of it.
Yeah. Stubbornness can be across the board. But I want to clarify that the reason I wanted to start first is because it's fourth on the list. It's fourth on the, when you do that inventory. And oftentimes we run out of time. And it's the one people have the most questions about many times, because if you know one, everybody has a concrete random person in their life. And if you don't understand them, they could be making your life a little difficult sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
That's not their intention or goal in life, but it's just the fact that they are so very different from the mainstream, from the status quo, and people don't understand them. They're very misunderstood. In fact, as a teenager, 13, 14 years old, I began to wonder, why do my teenage friends always question, why do you have to do it that way? Why do you want to do this? Why? And I'm like, I didn't know why. I didn't know why that was in me. That was my bent. I didn't understand it. And I started feeling there's something wrong with me. There's something really wrong with me, and I don't know what it is. And I'll tell you that question of what is wrong with me did not get satisfied or answered until 1998, when I was in my second year of teaching high school English in a private Christian setting. And I met this man. I took some courses in the summer and I met Dick. And the first thing we did in that class was to take this learning style inventory. And I tell you what, in about 10 minutes, my whole life made more sense than it had in the 30 years before that. That's how powerful an understanding of the learning styles can be.
That's how I feel about this too. I mean, I think it's a real eye opener, and it helps you settle down. Like if you're all worried about yourself and think there's, think you're all alone and beat yourself up, and even think as Christians, we think, well, we must be the world's biggest sinner because we're like the way we are. If especially, I would think in that particular one, maybe you wouldn't think that, but other people might think, what on earth, can't they get it together? Man, don't they listen to God? They're so hard-headed,
It's hard to have and appreciate. It's hard to fulfill our be who everything that our Creator, our Heavenly Father has created us to be if we don't understand who we are and we don't accept ourselves and the way He has the things He has put in us, the way He has made us. It's almost impossible to really reach to fulfill your destiny and to be all that He wants us to be if we don't have that understanding and acceptance of who we are, and not just of ourselves, but of those people around us who can sometimes irritate and annoy, and we don't understand why.
And how we interact with them can really change once we understand these concepts.
That's right.
Yeah, I heard Cynthia Tobias on one of her videos talking about that, like how you interact when you understand this. You can come to a truce, an understanding, an acceptance of one another, and get along so much better.
Right. Okay, so
well, there is a saying that says that you really can't understand somebody until you've walked a mile in their shoes. And in reality, what this has helped me to do since 1977 is to be able to think, if I were this person, and as soon as I have an understanding of their learning style, I go, oh my, I'm walking in their shoes right now, and I can see why they see this particular situation the way they do. And boy, it's so helpful.
Yes,
it really is extremely helpful in relationships. Yeah.
You all of a sudden appreciate them more. And then instead of feeling like you're fighting against them, you're like rooting for them.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so one of the most important things for a concrete random learning style, someone who is strong in concrete random, is that they have options and that they feel that they have some control over their lives. So if you as a young person have chores to do and your mother says, you're going to wash the dishes tonight, this is your week to wash dishes, something inside you makes your skin crawl. It like the hair goes up on the back of your neck because you were told what you had to do. No options, no discussion, no way out of it. That's what you have to do. I personally enjoy washing dishes. It was not my least favorite thing. I did not mind doing it. But when I was told that's what I had to do, suddenly I didn't want to do it anymore.
So Joanne, can I ask you, what about the mother with, 5 kids, and she makes up a chart for each of those children to do a certain chore? Should she approach that differently?
Well, there's a couple different ways it could be approached. And I think to include the child when she's making up the list, if you say, hey, how about you wash dishes this week and your sister's going to wash them next week, and just include them in the planning process. Okay. Obviously, there are some things that aren't negotiable, but I think parents need to be careful that they don't just lay down the law and this is the way it is and I'm the parent and you're the kid and because I said so. That doesn't fly at all with a concrete random. You have just signed up for a war with that child.
So choose your battles.
Yeah. What Joanne just said there is very important. She asked the child, how about if you wash the dishes, instead of coming out and saying, you are going to wash the dishes. There's a whole difference in that approach. You're basically including that child in that decision by presenting it that way, and it basically you're not putting yourself against that child. You're involving that child, and that is extremely, extremely important. They are not given the opportunity to shirk the responsibility. They're given a choice there.
It really can be as simple as the tone of voice you use and the choice of words.
Yes.
This is not rocket science for parents. You just have to have an understanding and even if in your mind it's not negotiable, present it as if it is, and be sure that you have some options in your back pocket, because options, this all comes back to me having a choice, me having a say in the matter.
It sounds so simple. Yes, I love it.
But as a concrete sequential, I have to think about that, because, see, the option's not a key for me. So I have to put some thought into it, no doubt about it. Of course, Joanne has some stories that have come to us from friends after actually taking our class or course or workshop on the learning styles.
I'd like to share 2 of those stories right now, if we could. And these both have to do with having options. Some friends of ours were raising their daughter. She was an only child, and at about the age of 4. And so they had some guests over one evening, and they were serving hot chocolate late in the evening, and it was just before her bedtime. And her mother poured hot chocolate into her cup, this child's cup, her favorite mug. And then she presented it to her, and the daughter decided, no, she didn't want that mug this time. So they had just attended a seminar, and they decided to try to apply some of the things that we had shared with them. And the father overheard this conversation. It looked like it was going to escalate. The mother saying, I poured it in that cup, you're going to have to drink it. That's it's your favorite mug. Well, the father stepped in, looked at the mother kind of knowingly, and they said, he gave his daughter some options. Now, this may not seem like an option to some parents, but this was an option to a 4-year-old. He said, to his daughter, you can choose, I'll give you a choice. You can choose to have hot chocolate in your favorite mug that your mother has poured for you, or you can choose to go to bed with no hot chocolate this evening at all. And she gladly and willingly reached for the cup in her favorite mug of hot chocolate, and she drank it. Problem solved. She had a choice. But when she was told, here's your hot chocolate and you're going to drink it in his mug, she bristled at that. That same daughter, probably not too much after that, at bath time was a problem for the mother, because she could not coax her daughter to get out of the water and get ready for bed. So again, they came up with some options. You have to put a little thought into it. This is the option that the mother presented to her daughter at bath time. She said, listen, if you get out now, when I need you to get out, I will help you towel dry. I'll towel you off and dry you. Or if you choose to stay in for another 5 minutes, you will need to dry yourself. And that's a very reasonable option for a 4 or 5-year-old.
Sure.
And so at that time, then the daughter, I believe she chose to have her mom help her. So the mother got what she wanted, and the daughter had an option. And it's a win-win. When options are presented to a concrete random, and they have the choice to make, it's a win-win for everybody.
How about if you, what if you invited them to actually, like, say you were planning a vacation and you asked the strong-willed child, here, help me plan this out. Help me plan an itinerary. Does that make them feel happier? Yes,
they are problem solvers. They are, they love to be in charge of something. You give them a project and let them do it their way, you will be amazed at what they will come up with. So yes, having a part in planning an itinerary, yes, absolutely. Now, the mother may need to say, well, we can't quite go here, but just having that conversation and them feeling as if they have control and they're contributing in a positive way is very beneficial.
I think the key, Bonnie, is also when you present the options, make sure that there are options that are acceptable and that you can live with them. If you present an option as more of a threat, if you do this, this will probably happen, and they say, okay, I'll take that. And you go, wait a minute, no, you're not supposed to take that. That will really upset the child, because why did you ask me? Why did you give me the option if you're not going to allow me to accept that option? So that's extremely important.
That reminds me of the story we heard in one of your classes about a woman who worked in a detention center, and she was getting into a verbal disagreement with one of the residents there. And she made the comment something about, you're going to do, I forget what the situation was. You're going to do this. I'm not going to, she said, I'm not going to sit down until you do this.
We're standing here.
We're standing here until you do this. And it was, I tell you, 5 hours later until that concrete random got tired enough to give in.
Oh,
or no,
the other person gave in.
The other person gave in.
The instructor said, I sat down.
The concrate random did not give in.
No.
You give them a challenge, you better be prepared.
Yeah.
I see. So if you need to be careful too, so that you don't kind of enable them to become a tyrant themselves.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're almost enabling them to become that if you're not careful with that.
Let's go to the abstract sequential again. This person, as I said, they're about 3%, and they really definitely do need time. That is the key. I'll just point out the fact they are going to analyze, and often they are questioned or accused of other people saying, why are you such a procrastinator? That's the label that is often put on them. And it's not that they're procrastinating. It is that they're gathering the information. And sometimes just about the time they're ready to make a decision, other information or new information comes to them. So they have to include that. And the time constraint is extremely important. Of all the learning styles, I would say that the abstract sequential is the ones who came back the next day in my classes that I taught to teachers, or even to student teachers at Lock Haven University. They would come back and say, Mr. Fetzer, I did my inventory over again. And I thought at first I was concrete sequential, but I realized I'm abstract sequential. And they said, I just needed more time to think about it. And that is extremely important, because that analyzing is very important. To give you an example, my son-in-law and I were meeting at a used computer store. He came in, and it was during lunch hour. I drove to meet him there, and we walked around, and he went I just allowed him to go to different places. And when he came to the end of his analysis of what he had seen there, he just looked at his watch and said, well, Dick, he said, I need to get back to work. And I said, okay. He left and I left. And his wife called me and said, did he buy one? My daughter and I said, Dad, you mean you drove all that distance to help him and he didn't buy one? I said, he needs time about it.
He was just collecting the
He was collecting information. He came to me a couple of weeks later and said, by the way, I went back and bought that computer after I went home and did some research on the internet, and also went to some different stores. And I looked at him and I said, so the fun's over. He said, yeah, they really enjoy it. And you certainly understand that.
I do. I'm the one who can have 50 or 60 tabs open on my browser at the same time, because I'm interested in lots of different things. And then within each of those things, I'm digging in, But I have a question, because I'm that way, and others who are that way. And you said that abstract sequentials are only 3%. Is that right?
Yes.
How do we stop ourselves? It's because it can almost be addictive. It's like somehow we need our boundaries about it's time to stop now. It's the research has to be done. You understand? Like, it's almost addictive. How do we set boundaries for ourselves?
I would say, first of all, right there, it's very important if you could say to the person, give them a range of boundaries. In other words, say, really, and if it is important, let's say if you ask a question, let's say that you would need the information within 2 days. Just let them know that I do hope that 2 days would be enough, because if you present it to them, they're usually a compliant person. They're not trying to, go against the system or anything of that sort. They'll do the best they can to meet that. But it's just when things are popped on them spontaneously and they just don't have much time to think about it. But I think you would agree, Bonnie, if somebody tells you, I'm going to give you a couple days to think about this, what that does is help you develop a priority. Okay, this has to be one of my main priorities during the next couple of days, because I will have to come back with some answer.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I have one story I'd like to share about people who go to restaurants, and if they're abstract sequential, how much of a challenge it is for them. I've spoken with many people who are abstract sequential. And by the way, you have to speak to a lot of people to speak to many abstract sequentials, because they are a minority. And I call them actually the silent sufferers, because give you an example. Abstract sequentials tell me that one of the most challenging things is to go to a restaurant for a meal with a group of people, and when they get there, they have not seen that menu prior to sitting down at that table and having that menu placed in front of them. And they've indicated that first thing they do when they look at that menu, they start analyzing. All right, first of all, what do I want? what looks like the best deal. What is the best combination here? I wonder also of the things that I'm looking at, what is this restaurant best known for? In other words, what is the most popular meal that I may be selecting? And as they're sitting there going through analyzing the information, they look up and they see that the rest of the people are kind of looking at them, waiting for them. And then they say they just simply pick something because they don't want to hold up the other group, the rest of the people in the group from ordering. And I asked them, I said, well, how do you solve this problem? And they said, if I know where I'm going, what restaurant I'm going to, and I can access that menu online, I can either make a choice of one or possibly two that things from that menu that I would feel comfortable purchasing that day or buying that day or eating that day. And I said, tell me how that makes you feel when you can do that in advance. He said, you have no idea the pressure that it takes off of me, allowing me that time to be able to do it. So I cannot emphasize enough, when you're talking to a abstract sequential person, understand that saying to them, now I know you need time to think about this. And you need to do that up front. Even before you present the information, you need to establish in your mind that you're going to have to give them some time. Otherwise, they are going to be extremely frustrated. In most cases, they will probably select something that they didn't even want or do something that they didn't want to do because they just didn't have time to do it, to work it through.
Right.
That's very important, very important.
Another thing about the abstract sequential is that we said they have emotions, but they do not express them. So for the other learning styles who read people and who especially the people pleasers, that I need to know where you stand. I need to know what you expect of me and what you think of me is very important to me. And I'm not getting anything from you. So that causes, like, I either misconstrue what it is I think you're thinking. You're probably not thinking anything about me, but there are those learning styles that need to know how other people feel about them, or they can tell it. They have vibes and they can feel. And the vibe you get from an abstract sequential is often maybe not a good one because they haven't decided how they think yet. They're still processing, or they're not at all thinking about you. They're thinking about something last week. And that itself can cause friction between people. So
do you think we don't key in on people quite like some of the other learning styles do?
Well, I don't know if it's the abstract sequentials don't key in on people, or the other learning styles can't key in on them because you're not giving them any feedback.
I see.
I made a statement to a group of teachers one time. I said, the abstract sequential has no emotion. And afterwards, a lady came up and very, very graciously and politely said to me, Dick, I do need you to understand something. We have very strong emotion, but we do not show it. And we tend to basically stuff that emotion, or we're often analyzing that emotion and we're trying to decide, do I have enough fact to really substantiate the way I feel? There's that analysis again. And I think that is extremely important. Yes, they have very, very much emotion. And going back to the listening, your abstract sequential do not bring things to the table and just throw it out on the table and say, this is how I feel. They bring that information out in a very selective way. They only bring just a little bit of information, and how you handle that will decide whether they feel comfortable in sharing anything more with you. Because and anytime you come back to them with something, it's so important for the person who is interacting with that abstract sequential person to understand that they are analyzing almost everything that you're doing. Yeah. So if you hit them with 5 things, you may as well understand they're back on number 1, still analyzing what you said, thinking about it. And you're saying, well, you're not with me. And they say, well, yes, I am, but you're on number 5 and I'm still working on number 1.
We have that difficulty in our relationship quite a bit. I'm like, blah, put it all on the table. I'm more random. He's more sequential. Okay, so I come at him with 3 or 4 questions, and he's like, "Whoa, wait, one. I'm still back on number 1." I'm like, "Come on, because my mind can multitask. I can do several things at once. You know, he puts things in compartments, and one compartment at a time.
Yes.
That's it."
Well, I think you might ask the first question, and then I might have 4 questions back at you about that one question that
Yes.
need to be settled in me before I can even go on to your second.
Right. That's right. And just having the understanding that to know that our minds do not take in and process information in the same way can alleviate a lot of misunderstanding, a lot of impatience. It just helps a lot. People need to understand themselves, and they need to understand the people around them.
Bonnie, I think it's extremely important for people who are relating to the abstract sequential. That abstract sequential wants to give you the best response they can. They're not going to flippantly tell you something just off the top of their head. They don't work off the top of their head. They thoroughly think about things. And before they tell you or before they respond to you, they want to make sure. And, you know, that's one thing. Like, I have a son-in-law who is highly abstract sequential. And when I talk with him and I ask him a question, the first thing I do in my mind is know that I'm going to wait. I'm going to wait for him to respond. And the other thing is that is so hard, as Joanne said, with the other learning styles, they're watching the body language. Dr. Robert Bolden, in his book, People Skills, says 85% of communication is nonverbal. So if you're talking to somebody, you're really excited about what you're talking about, and they're just sitting there like, that's interesting. You may think they really aren't listening to what I'm saying or what's wrong with them. Not a thing. They're doing everything they can to go, wow, that's a very interesting bit of information. I need to think about that. And that's go ahead.
I know I don't think quick on my feet, because maybe that's part of the reason I just can't think quick on my feet. I need time to go over stuff and come to an answer.
And Bonnie, when you give that answer, you give the most thorough answer you possibly can.
Because it's well thought out.
Yes.
And analyzed. And
yes.
It's your final answer.
Let's move to the abstract random.
These are the creative, colorful sights and sounds. They can multitask. They need stimulation. They need external stimulation to keep their minds working at top optimum.
Yeah, when I come into the home, Joanne usually has some type of Christian video on, or music or something of that sort. And I like music, but I have a hard time, especially if it's somebody singing words and we're trying to communicate. She'll often say to me, I think you need to turn the music off.
Because he can't process that and what I'm trying to say to him at the same time, whereas that doesn't affect an abstract random. The more stimuli, the better for them.
Right.
Okay, so it's like the child doing the homework with the radio blaring. That works. That particular child can do that.
All out on the floor, papers everywhere. Yes, that child.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'd like to address the word organized, because when we often think of organized, I think concrete sequentials kind of developed this. This is what you have to do: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and that is how they're organized. But your abstract random is not organized that way. I'll give you an example. When I would give a math assignment to my 2nd or 3rd graders, I would say, well, I am asking you to do 10 out of any 20 problems. And I did that because of the learning styles. In other words, letting them know that you have a choice. And I'm thinking about the concrete random. And then what would happen is I would have a child come up to me and very seriously say to me, Mr. Fetzer, you said we could do any 10 out of 20? I said, yes. Can I do number 20 first? Now, before I understood the learning styles, my thought was, what? Why would you want to do that number 20 first? But that's almost like a threat to that child, or condemning. I would look at the child and I'd say, I'm really interested in why you've decided to do number 20 first. And they said, I like it. Story, not problem. Is it okay if I do that one first? I said, yes. I said, now the only thing is, you need to make sure that you put number 20 next to that rather than number 1. And they go, okay. And they're excited about it. Now, again, I'm going to jump over a little bit just to show you the difference in them and the concrete random. Concrete random may come up and say, by the way, Mr. Fetzer, I noticed there are 45 problems on the page, and I noticed the problem number 35 is the same as number 17. Can I do it? And I look at them, and I would say, tell me why. And they said, well, I think it's really going to demonstrate that I understand what I'm doing. I said, okay, you can do that. Now, other people in the group may say, but you allowed him to do that. I said, if you find another one on there and you can come to me and tell me why you want to do it, I'll let you do it. So it changed my whole approach to teaching. If you think about the fact as a concrete sequential, when I'm dealing with that abstract random child, what comes across many times for me just seems like a response to them. It could seem like I'm condemning them. And that's very, very important.
So you think like this can help with behavioral problems in the home, in the classroom?
Definitely.
Oh, yes, definitely. Definitely.
If you understand and you're flexible and willing to work with the individual learning styles as you understand them, it is a game changer.
Yes.
In any setting, classroom, home life, workplace.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. And again, your abstract random is going to choose a different way of doing things. For instance, if they do have household chores, if you're a concrete sequential parent or abstract sequential or whatever, concrete random, and you feel they should be doing it in this way, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and you go and all of a sudden they're doing something that is
out of order,
could be the least important thing that they should be doing, and you criticize them for it. The only thing they can do, they feel that they've been attacked, and it's not that they're just trying to be rebellious or anything. One of the things about them, they are very, very sensitive to pleasing other people, and when they realize they haven't pleased you, that is very hard.
This is the abstract random you're talking about.
Yes, the abstract random. It would hurt them to realize that mom or dad or whoever is really not pleased with what I'm doing or how I'm doing it. That's extremely important.
Okay.
And I want to give you an example. My youngest daughter, one time I walked into the basement. She had the TV on, was talking on the telephone and doing her homework. And at that point, she was in college. Now, I walked through the rec room, saw her on the floor, and saw all this activity going on around her. And I just shook my head because for me, that just wouldn't work at all. But I remembered she is abstract random, and that's how she operates. Honestly, I just kept going.
That's look the other way, right?
Well, I do remember saying, wow, I can see that you're really very busy at this point. And that's
so affirmative, just be affirmative rather than destructive.
Yes.
Wow. How about the person who doesn't clean their room? Can that fit in all 4 learning styles, or is there a particular learning style that seems to fit more in?
To cleaning or not cleaning their room?
Like not cleaning their room, or like letting it go and letting it go and letting it go and letting it go, and then all of a sudden have a moment where they decide to spring clean their room, you know?
Well, your randoms, both the abstract random and the concrete random, can put up with clutter in a way that the sequentials cannot. Because clutter does not look sequential to a sequential, and clutter probably is not sequential by the definition, but the randoms are okay with the clutter. They know where things are. Like right now, my desk is pretty piled high, but I know exactly where everything is. See, in my mind, it is organized. It's organized because I know where things are, but if it wouldn't suit him. It wouldn't suit him at all, but I know where things are. And I'll tell you something. When I was a secretary and worked for a psychologist one time, I didn't know styles then, and I don't know what he was, but I decided when he took a week of vacation, I went in and cleaned his desk off, and I thought I was doing a good thing for him. Well, when he came back, he didn't know where anything, like, it's all neatly right here in piles. What's not to like about that? He did not like that. He didn't know where things were. It looked messy to me, but he knew where he could find things in that mess.
That reminds me of my brother-in-law and sister. I was up at their house. My sister had, I don't know if it was some kind of a physical condition. I was up there helping her, so I was cleaning the house for her, and her husband has an office. And I thought, well, I tried to go in and clean it, but everything was just, so piled or scattered or everything. And so that has become like a joke, don't clean his office,
Yeah, we have to respect that. I think we need to talk about concrete sequentials yet. That's
We'll
expertise.
move on to the concrete sequentials. And of course, I'm so glad that I do understand the other learning styles, because we can tend to be hard on people. With our thought about organization and order, we can just look at almost anybody and say, I don't know why you don't get your life straightened out. And that just comes across in no other way than just condemning that person. We may think we're helping them, and we're not. All we're doing is condemning them.
Well, concrete sequentials have a tendency to think that their way is the right way, the only way, and everybody should do it their way. Well, try telling a concrete random that, and you won't get very far.
That's exactly right. By the way, somebody asked, which of the learning styles does seem to fight the most against each other? It's actually two concrete randoms, because they both want to have the control. The other learning style, the other learning style has. I'm sorry?
I'm just saying that's very interesting. That not one learning style against another, but two concrete randoms against each other.
Now, unless they respected and trusted, and that's one thing we didn't actually touch on with the concrete randoms, if they respect and trust each other, they will be very loyal to one another. But that has to be earned, and it takes a long time to earn the trust and respect of a concrete random. But it's like who's in charge. It's like who's the alpha.
So the concrete sequential, again, has to be very much aware of that. I will tell you a couple of things. Time is extremely important to them. I've always told people if I'm 15 minutes early, I'm on time. If I'm there at the time, I'm late, and we don't even talk about after that. So it's extremely, we have a timepiece almost in our heads. I could be sitting out in the woods going in at, let's say 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning to hunt deer, and I don't even have to look at my watch, and I'll go, well, pretty sure about an hour and a half going by. And I'll be pretty close to it. It just seems like we have that timepiece in our mind, and we gauge things like that. The other thing is definitely dealing with one thing at a time and not being distracted by other things. I just use an example. Joanne and I went with her family one time to a restaurant, and I enjoyed being around her family. However, they sat me someplace where there were 3 TVs in front of me. And as a concrete sequential, my biggest challenge was trying to keep those 3 TV programs straight in my mind. And 2 hours, we walked out, and Joanne said to me, you didn't talk to my family much.
I was really upset.
I said, Joanne, you don't understand. I was busy. She said, what were you doing? I said, I was trying to watch those 3 TV programs. So honestly, when we go into a restaurant, she makes sure that I'm located so that TV is at my back.
If I want him to converse with me or whoever we're with, he cannot be distracted. I can shut that out of my mind, but he cannot.
Yeah, I can't block out.
He can't block it out.
I can't block it out. That's very important. I can tell you right now that I have a set of headphones by my computer at all times, because if I want to really listen to something and Joanne's doing something, I just simply put the headphones on so I can concentrate and hear what's being said, or actually watch the video, or whatever the case may be. But we really do. Goals are very important to us. Setting things down. Priority is extremely important. I can even tell you, Bonnie, on my computer, I keep my inbox hopefully below 30.
Oh, my word.
Yeah.
He cleans out stuff, and then I ask for something important. Well, it's already gone.
And I have to go to trash sometimes and dig things out. I can't explain it. There's just something about that. When I look at all those different choices on there, that is extremely overwhelming.
Well, for me, I might have over 1,000 in my inbox.
Same here.
Opened, unopened, whatever. But I have a hard time parting with them, even though I like things to be in order. I have a hard time parting with them because I think I might need them, or I might need to read them again, or, oh, wow, I wish I could be like you with that.
And see, that's the abstract part of you. You can look at that and it doesn't bother you.
Well, it bothers me. I do like to get in there and clean it up sometimes, but not nearly enough. It bothers me, but not enough to do something about it, I guess.
Wow.
I think it's important for people to understand that nobody is just all one learning style. There are 4 styles as defined by Dr. Anthony Gregoric, and Cynthia Tobias explains them well in her book, but everybody has a little bit of each of them. It's just, we're talking here, what is your dominant learning style? You can actually be really close to 2 or 3 of them. And here's something interesting is that when I was teaching, I scored higher in the concrete sequential because I was on 40-minute class periods a day, 5 days a week. I was on a schedule. That was my life. But when I became a homemaker and was no longer teaching, my abstract random got a little higher than my concrete sequential when I took the inventory. And so it's pretty cool that the inventory shows what, your life. It's kind of fluid, that you can, depending what situation you find yourself in, you can gravitate towards some. No, they were all pretty close to the top, yes. But the one just rose a few points above the other in that situation where I found myself currently.
Right, you can bounce in and out of them. Interestingly, my highest is concrete sequential. My lowest is concrete random. I really don't do well going into the concrete random because it's very minor in my life, no doubt about that. But we just think it's so important that people understand, first of all, who they are. And if they can really get a handle on what Cynthia says in her book, it will change their lives, because they'll be able to look at people in a more positive way and say, wow, I can appreciate now how you see that, whereas before I didn't understand that.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's how we'll end here, because that's so important. And I just did want to say, Joanne, that when I did my little survey with my family at Thanksgiving, there were 2 men who said they act one way at work and one way at home. What I found interesting is when they completed the survey, they did not do it according to how they are at home. They automatically chose to do it according to how they act at work.
Okay.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting.
That is interesting.
That is a beautiful insight. You have no idea how many teachers that would take my course, or even students, would say that when they are, let's say the teacher is a teacher, they have a routine to follow, they would go more the concrete sequential, but then when they get home, they would move into the abstract and the random. And I said, tell me where you're more relaxed. They said at home, because there is where I can really be myself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it's important.
Well, what closing thoughts would you share with our audience?
I would say, again, just to reiterate, that I really honestly feel it would be so crucial if everybody could understand these different learning styles, understand that God has made them the way they are, and understand that if they can look at other people and appreciate that they're not, as I said before, waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning to make their life miserable, it would be so helpful. I've actually had a number of people come to me and say, Dick, you have no idea that when we took your course, it really affected our marriage. I had some people come and say it saved their marriage because they had a better understanding.
It's very powerful information. And if you have a spouse, or you're living with a roommate, or you have children, or relate closely to another human being, this would benefit you to understand the learning styles. Definitely.
Amen.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for joining us. And we'll have you back again for something. I'm not sure what, but I have thoroughly enjoyed this. This has been an eye-opener for me, and I'm sure it will be for our viewers. And again, you'll find a lot of links in the description. And this is Know and Grow. You can't live what you don't know. And we learned a lot. So we know more now how to get along with ourselves and others. Thanks for joining us. Dick and Joanne, you want to say goodbye?
Thank you.
Thank you, Bonnie.
Thank you, Bonnie.
Thank you. Take care. We love you. God bless you all. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.